I think we have a challenge within this industry and just how we are partnering, taking care of, and looking at our farmers, right? If you think of just sustainable wage, are we paying enough for the products in which we're sourcing to allow people to be successful, clear on the other side of the world?
Welcome back, everyone, to Smarter Sourcing. My name is John Pavia, and in this episode, we're super glad to have with us Jeff Bever, the Vice President of Strategic Sourcing at Russell Stover. Jeff, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Really great to be here.
You have one of those jobs that I say to myself, if I worked there, I'd be 900 pounds. Stover chocolate. I'm like, I don't understand addiction. I mean, it's one of those things I don't, but except when it comes to chocolate. And like my wife would tell you, 10:30 comes around, and even if she's not in the kitchen, we're at our house where I'm at right now, she starts hearing the cabinets opening. She knows I'm looking for chocolate. It's like, it's ridiculous. So you look like you're in great shape.
Yeah, it goes in waves. So I've been fortunate enough to not only work here at Russell Stover and Lent, but also be a part of the Mars organization. So candy has always been around, and I'm always fighting with that sweet tooth.
I guess that's better. I walk around places like the corporate offices at Diageo, and there's tons of liquor all over the place. So
yeah.
So listen,
there's worse vices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you started out buying grain. You say you went start buying grain, and then construction, and
yeah.
So I have a similar resume. I remember I was sitting in a meeting years ago with someone from Corn Ferry, and he looks up and he goes, "So I don't mean any disrespect from this." He goes, but this resume makes no sense to me. Like, okay, that's a great way to start an interview, but it went well no matter what. But so tell me, you started out by what did you want to do? You're sitting there in college and you're like, what were you thinking you wanted to do?
I think my ambition was really just around like anybody who's 18, 19 years old going into college, not really sure what they want to do. I came from an agricultural background. Grandparents were farmers, parents were involved in agriculture. And so I took that track from an agricultural standpoint. And I think my first ambition was to be a livestock broker, right? So to buy and source, animals.
Why? Had you gone to something as a kid and be like, man, this is cool, I want to do this?
Yeah, I had just a childhood friend whose father did that, and we got to experience that, going to the sale barns and watching that, him sit around the ring and buy and talk to all the producers and farmers. And I thought, that's a pretty cool job. Maybe I should do something like that. And I think that really kind of led me down to say, okay, I'm going to major in animal science, agriculture. That's what I want to do. And then like any college student, you start to explore and learn other things. And we had organizations such as the Cargills, the Continental Grains, others come and speak to us. And for me, it was really just a little bit of exploration. And I kind of stumbled onto this career. And it was around trading, still agricultural driven, the chance to move around a bit through sourcing. So working with producers, working in small country elevators, things of that nature.
So then you go from that to construction. Tell us about that.
Well, the same thing that got me energized and excited to go into the grain piece, the moving around, the different experiences. I was fortunate enough, I was doing a rotation at the Board of Trade in Kansas City. At the time, hard red winter wheat was traded there. I was working downtown Kansas City. It's fun, exciting, a lot more exciting than, a Tulia, Texas, or an Eads or Counter, Colorado, where you're working out, with producers, towns of, 3,000 people. And I met my wife. And so we spent a little bit of time. I spent a little bit of time here in Kansas City, and then it was time for the next rotation. And what I realized was, this moving around, wanting to settle down a little bit, kind of drew me back to Kansas City and to her. And so as I started looking for, okay, what can I do that will keep me in Kansas City? The housing market at that time in the early 2000s was really robust. And so tremendous amount of opportunity I had, college friends and connections that were within that industry working for Pulte Group. So Pulte Group's a large residential home builder here in the U.S., very notable organization, very well respected. And I just kind of fell into it. And, as I joined that organization, what I found was the skills that I had been building through, the agricultural commodities. So whether it be the relationships, price risk management, looking at commodities, allowed me to really bring a skill set into a new industry that was just starting to look at how did they manage their contracts? How did they leverage scale? How did they look at markets? And so it really allowed me to start to take off and have a new career, if you will.
And in that role, were you able to get out to the job sites? I mean, you're building homes, right? So
I spent a ton of time. I think with any new job or any role, you got to live it, right? You really have to understand your product. You have to spend time in the seat of those people that you're supporting. And when I came into the home building piece, I actually started in the customer service side. So, knocking on doors, making sure people were satisfied with their homes, doing follow-ups, got to do some rotations in the field as project management, running job sites, working directly with the trade. So then when I sat down across the table to negotiate the contracts from a labor standpoint or material standpoint, it was extremely relatable and allowed me to really have empathy, but at the same time, use kind of that skill set and negotiation, contracting, and things for advancing our organization as well.
So just as an aside, my dad, growing up, we had an antenna business, and we put antennas up. My favorite thing that I worked with them when I was a kid, nothing I enjoyed more than going out to a construction site where the new homes are being built and getting out there, and the food truck comes up and the guys are on in the morning, and then the lunch hits. And it was to this day, I have moments where I'll see a construction site and I'll be, man, those are some of my happiest memories working with my dad at those kind of sites, just hanging out with the guys out on a construction site.
Yeah, I think, if you haven't experienced it, I think it's a great profession. The trades, that profession itself, I mean, you're tangibly building something. At the end of the day, you walked away and you can actually see what you've done. And I think, that's one of the most rewarding pieces.
That had to be an interesting time because I got stuck in Kansas City on 9/11. Okay. I was there for a big meeting and there was no flying I was there for four days that I didn't expect to be there. And I had it was just a surreal time, right? But what I learned was, and this is back, 20 some odd years ago, what a cool city. And it's lots to do. Much more cosmopolitan than people would think, and the people were great. So but that back then when you were there building those houses, I remember there was just development going on all over the place.
Yeah, it's a great city. I think I've had the fortune to work across the U.S. and a lot of people don't recognize how great Kansas City is. I always joke and tease them that it's no different than Dallas, New York, or anywhere else. We may only have one, but we've got one of everything.
Well, anyway, Taylor Swift seems to like it, so I think that
absolutely.
So let's talk about your what you're doing now, and you're one of those guys that you've got stuff on the record, meaning as you've been out there a little bit, and I love some of the things you have out there, and your diverse background. Number one, I think is, by the way, I'm a big believer in having a background where you did a bunch of different things, because I think you bring a lot of skills and skill sets to whatever job you're doing next. But tell me, give us an idea of what you're doing today and how some of the things that you wouldn't normally think, even from the construction days and the skills that you learned during those days, how you bring to bear now, and it actually helps you in the success you're having at your current place.
Yeah, I think, today, my current role with Russell Stover, it's really around transformation of a company that is 100 years old this year. It's the centennial of this organization. They were acquired by the Lent Springley Group back in 2014. So you've got a very Midwest type centric company that is really trying to make sure that it's relevant in the modern age. And so, a lot of our associates are very long tenure, very traditional within our function. But not only what I thought was exciting about coming to this role was not just transforming procurement, but really being a part of transforming the broader organization. So as a part of that, I actively sat with the leadership team here in Kansas City on, the proverbial seat at the table, if you will, that everybody, always speaks about when we think about holistic decision making and being a part of that conversation. And that was exciting for me. I think in any kind of change that I've had, whether it be career, role, or anything, at the foundation, it's always people. It's relationships. It's understanding your business. It's the enterprise kind of mindset. I think the relationship piece and building trust and credibility through my career, whether that be having to do that with a farmer, having to do that with skilled trades, now having to do that with different management teams that sit not only here in the US, but set overseas in Europe, and then just embracing technology in different pieces.
So you brought up like 10 different things in that answer that I want to dive into each one. Let's talk about the people and talk about your organization. And are you, centralized, decentralized? How many you have in direct, indirect, and where you sit in all that?
So from a global standpoint, the group companies, if you will, the Lent group, is fairly decentralized. So each individual business unit operates independently. And then Russell Stover itself is its wholly owned subsidiary. So we have our own management teams, procurement, supply chain teams. So we are fully accountable for that. My role within Russell Stover is a little bit unique compared to the rest of the group companies because our supply chain is a little different. So within my remit, I have direct, indirect, material management, co-man, co-packing. And so my scope is a little bit broader than my peers, if you will. And I think some of that just lends to experiences, background with broader companies working across many different disciplines previously, leading S&OP processes and different things. So when I took this role, it was really more around strategic sourcing to make a step change in that aspect of it. But as I came in, as I started to share some experiences and different insights and perspective, I picked up, several other functions along the way.
Got it. And so when you're looking at people that you're managing, roles that you fill, what are you looking for? Because, and you're looking for people who have diverse backgrounds. You're looking for those people that, for something, I'm always envious of these people. They knew exactly what they wanted to do when they were sophomores in college, and then they got that degree, and then they went to business school and got another degree to complement the first one. And they've had a career in procurement, strategic sourcing, supply chain management. What do you look for?
Well, I think it's always each role. I look at it as each role is unique. What are the skill sets that we need for that role? So, one, I always look for a growth mindset in anybody. So people who want to learn, who are ambitious, who are great collaborators. So for me, John, when I look at building teams, I'm not always looking for that, person that's had 20 years of category experience, specific category experience. There may be a place or a need for that individual, but I'm not looking always for the rock star. What I'm looking for is people that I can put together, almost like a puzzle, piece things together where people can learn from each other, that they can help develop each other, they can motivate each other, because it's really about building the best team versus having a couple rock stars that are consistently competing against each other. And so, my talent strategy has always been, what are the 2 or 3 key skills that we need for a category, whether it be a soft skill of building stakeholder relationship, whether it be we need someone with a lot of horsepower within the data and analytics side to help us drive insights. So I think every role is always unique. And I think to do that, then you have to look across a broader spectrum. I've recruited people out of sales and marketing, supply chain, customer service, procurement, no one is off the limits when it comes to talent or good people, because it's really just about what's the quality of person that you're trying to go after.
And Russell Stover, I know it's now owned by a European company, but distributes all over the world, or it distributes mostly here?
We're mainly in the Americas. So if you think of U.S., Canada, Mexico, is what our footprint from a distribution standpoint.
And your supply chain, in terms of your raw materials,
is global.
Global. So now, what keeps you up at night? And I say that because we're coming off of. We're going to get to the pandemic, but even more recently, we've had the threat of the shutdown of the ports along the eastern seaboard, and of course, you're making chocolate candies and treats. So, what keeps you up at night in terms of what are you planning for, and more importantly, how is your contingent planning now different than what it was years ago before the pandemic?
Yeah, I've got two answers for you. The first one, I will tell you what keeps me up at night is, did I do everything that I could that day to make my team successful? I think that's number one. Number two, I would say right now, anybody that is in, the confectionery industry, it's cocoa, the cocoa supply chain, the sustainability topics, the volatility that we have in the market. That is probably the second thing that keeps me tossing and turning at night. I think, we have a challenge within this industry, and just how we are partnering, taking care of, and looking at our farmers, right? If you think of just sustainable wage, are we paying enough for the products in which we're sourcing to allow people to be successful, clear on the other side of the world? And I think what we've seen is, most recently, everybody who's followed or understood at one point, I think a cocoa bean was more expensive than a penny, right? It was more valuable than a penny. We've seen prices go, the value of a metric ton of cocoa be 450, I think as high as 450% over what it traded a year ago. I think today it's settled in somewhere around 250% higher than what it is. And as we referenced, as we got started, we all most of us like chocolate. Most of us as an adult, it's a little bit of an escape, right? So if you think of Russell Stover, make happy, we want people to be happy when they're consuming our products and just have a moment of enjoyment. And so for us, I think, this whole balance around sustainability and then supply and demand, because there's a lot of things that are going on within our supply chain, whether it be climate change, disease, geopolitical unrest, new governmental requirements that are happening for the specific commodities that we're using, and that's only on the raw input side. As I shared, we are global, and so we source a lot of materials, packaging materials, and different things. Films, board, all different pieces from other parts of the globe as well. So we have a whole nother set of risks and supply chains that we have to look at, not only from an agricultural commodity standpoint.
So let's combine those two things, because talent and sort of resource planning, contingency planning. And the reason I say combine is because I had a really interesting conversation with a colleague in another company of yours in similar position. And they said something that was very interesting to me, how they're using AI now and trying to be predictive of what's around the corner. And even 2-3, forget about the wars that could break out and, pandemics and whatnot, but things that can, if you used historical data, you might be able to predict a worldwide shortage of eggs, or a spike in the price of Coke, whatever. And combining that with they find themselves now looking for people who, and mostly younger people who are more recently coming out of college and business schools, where they think they're more well-versed in understanding how to use their analytical skills and the AI generation that we're in now towards being predictive. You find yourself doing the same thing?
Yeah, I would say there's companies that are much more advanced than we are in that predictive piece. I think for a number of years now, people have set up and recognized that predictive analytics is a tool in the tool belt. And I think that there's a piece of the predictable analytics that, we all have aspirations of being able to have the tools, the technology, the people. And in organizations like a Mars or a Nestle or Kraft, where they're a much larger organization, they have a lot more of those resources than, say, a medium-sized organization such as ourselves. But I think it's an interesting topic because, AI, data lakes, all this information that we have, at the end of the day, we still have to be able to tell us what the data is. So there's a piece around the insights and being able to look through the data. So we can build great, perfect models. I think what we continue to have to do with the younger people that can actually put the models together is educate them on what the models are actually telling us. And some of that is through history. Some of that is not looking back over the last 5 years or 10 years, what's happened, but what we're starting to do and what we're looking and finding more relevant is what's happened over the last 6 months or 9 months, because that is becoming more indicative to our current environment than what's happened because of, it's no longer these anomalies of a 9/11 or a COVID. We're in constant flux of volatility. And so volatility has, instead of, being the one-off or what we need to contingency plan for, it's really become second nature and what we're living through every day.
So as we're thinking about that, right? I can tell from what I've read about you and just other things that you have out there. You're a big believer in really mentoring the younger people that you bring on, and the big thing with you is thinking as an enterprise thought leader versus being a category manager and thinking in a silo. And so, first of all, I want you to explain what that means in regular. I think I know what it means, but I want to hear you describe it. And then also, when you think of someone who taught you that and mentored you, when something's getting really, really tense, you're in a high pressure situation, the heat is on, people are looking at you to make a big decision. Who's whispering in your ear from your past? And what mentor do you usually default to and say, he or she was here right now, this is what he'd be telling me or she would be telling me?
Yeah, a couple of questions in there. So I think the first piece, I've been fortunate enough to have, a couple of different mentors that have been impactful through my career. Sometimes it's been role or organization specific. Others, one specifically stands out across no matter what organization I've been a part of or what industry, whether FMCG, CPG, agriculture, construction, right? So across that wide span. So Krista Page is someone that has been a true mentor and coach to myself. And I think, a lot of credit goes to her, not only for the success that I've had, but I would like to believe that I've been able to pass along to my teams and other people's success as well. So I think her mentorship, guidance, coaching has been invaluable to me. I think when you get in those tense situations, I think the first thing is slow things down. That's always the piece, right? And listen. For me, I would rather sit there and listen, take it in, digest, be a little slow to respond to the question to make sure that I understand it. Ask the question. If you don't know, if you don't understand, ask the question. Be okay to tell people you need a minute to reflect. And I think that for, some of the generations that are coming up and people who are very ambitious within their career, they believe they always have to have the answer in the moment. And the reality is we don't always have the answer in the moment. Sometimes we need some time to reflect. We need time to consult and pull on other experiences or maybe other resources. So I think there's always that piece.
So when you have one of your younger people tell you or ask you, Jeff, what do you mean by think with an enterprise mindset, not a category management mindset? And they say, what do you mean by that? What do you tell them?
Yeah. So the enterprise mindset for me is removing yourself from like your function or your silo and think of it holistically as a business and think about the impacts and the decisions that you're making really across the whole value chain and the organization. And so if you're doing a deal for media, right? So I was fortunate enough, I've actually not only done commodities and the raw materials and factory general services, packaging, all of these great things. But I had the good fortune to also spend time in the marketing and sales realm, which is a total different, mindset, stakeholder, customer, if you will, from a procurement standpoint than a supply chain leader. Just the way they think, the way they approach business. And so when you pull yourself out of that category piece and you start to understand, what are what's the objective? What's important to them? What are they trying to accomplish? Start communicating in the language that they use. What does it mean? How do we drive growth? What does the deal that you're working on? Does it mean extra sales for them? Is it additional NTS? Is it, additional margin for the organization? Is it going to slow us down? Is it going to speed us up? What's the complexity behind what we're trying to do? And that's the enterprise mindset, because it starts to pull you out of, kind of that moment that you're in and only focusing on, did I get the best deal? Did I, drive value in the historic sense or procurement sense of, did I save money? Did I get, maybe a few extra services? But are you making things more complicated for our business? Are we truly impacting the things that really matter to our stakeholders and to the future growth and success of the organization as a whole? And that's the enterprise mindset, because and I think this can happen across, whether you're a sourcing person, a supply chain person, a marketing sales leader, any of those, we all get siloed in our own place and we want to be the best, but you have to step back and think about, every decision, every action that we do has an impact on the business and others.
So I know we're going a little over here, but let me ask one more question before I let you go.
Yeah.
What's next for procurement and strategic sourcing, supply chain management in general? What I mean by that is, to get a little more granular, where do you see, let's take technology and let's just AI, where's the first place it's going to have the biggest impact besides analytics? And I'll give you an example. I asked this question of someone else, and they said, his comment was pretty good. He goes, it's in a place I don't think people rarely think about it. He goes, I think transportation, because I just see whether it's drones delivering things or long haul trucking, getting to a point where, they don't have a driver, or the driver is able to be there, but doesn't have to drive the truck himself behind the wheel. And I was like, that may be right. So where do you think it's going to have the most? And first, it's going to initially have the biggest impact that we're going to say, wow, this is such a change from the way we used to do things.
I think it's, technology, procurement as a function is evolving rapidly. So if you think of, you mentioned technology, and we can think of, whether it's the transportation or the warehouses in the future, things that we've really been talking about for 10, 15 years. I think the technology space is the enabler to the potential of the function and the people that choose this discipline as a career. And so what I think is the technology piece allows us to develop our people faster and enable our businesses to combat more of the supply chain risks, to make more decisions from innovation. So I think that, this technology piece could actually accelerate innovation, helping us with decisions on make versus buy. If you think of, some of the great things out there, I remember when I started, we had these massive decks for the 7-step sourcing strategies and how we would go through the process. And it would take months and months to put a sourcing strategy together. Right. And you would sit with somebody and they would teach you how to do this. Or if you haven't gone to, an MBA school, you didn't know about the Borders 5 forces. You didn't know how to do all these different risk assessments and everything and trying to locate the data. Today, things are being connected. So you look at, some of the AI technology around, guided strategy creation, where you can connect all of your data, all of your insights, the data lakes, and things that prompt, younger buyers, younger sourcing professionals through, and help them to learn and understand, and do that in a matter of weeks with real-time refreshed data from not only your internal data lakes, but also external providers of data and insights as well. So I think, an acceleration standpoint and the work, I don't think that the roles go away. I don't think the function goes away. I think it evolves. And that's what's the most exciting piece for me. And I think that's where this whole merger of technology, enterprise thinking, it's almost like the role of a futurist, if you will, almost, because you're really thinking of a bigger picture. You're bringing things to the business on how to solve challenges and problems that they may not even be thinking of yet. So that's what I'm excited about. I think this is a great era and a great time for people to actually join this field as an actual career, unlike some of us who just happily stumbled onto it and said, hey, this
Fell into it.
pretty great place to be. I get to do a lot of different things. I get to talk to people. And so it's pretty exciting.
Jeff, this has been great. I really appreciate you spending time with us. Man, I think about the different things that you've done, what you're doing right now, and also your what's ahead. And I do think it's a fascinating background. And I think whatever's around the corner is going to be equally as fascinating. So thanks for spending this time with us. I think people especially in this field are really going to enjoy this interview. But really pleasure meeting you, and look to stay in touch with you.
Yeah, sounds great, John. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody who's tuned in or is listening. And we look forward to our next episode with you on Smarter Sourcing. My name is John Pavia, and you take care.